Welcome to the deep dive. Today our mission is to explore, well, one of the most famous survival stories ever told. Daniel Defoe's 1719 classic, Robinson Crusoe.
Yeah, a total classic.
Right? And we're pulling from the audiobook transcripts of the first 10 chapters of the novel today. Plus, we'll be weighing that original text against some modern critiques from book review sites. Rebecca Reed's and Capes and Tights.
Which really offers some fascinating pushback on the original text.
Oh, absolutely. So, I say Robinson Crusoe, you probably picture this guy just relaxing under a gently swaying coconut tree, maybe drawing a giant SOS in the sand, just, sort of waiting around for a rescue ship to show up.
Right, the little tropical vacation vibe.
Exactly. But our goal today is to completely shatter that pop culture image. We're going to examine the bleeding hands reality of extreme isolation. We'll look at the violent shift in what things are truly valuable when society just disappears. And, of course, how modern readers grapple with a protagonist who was forged in the 1700s.
Yeah, because that coconut tree image you mentioned, it's a complete vacation fantasy.
Right.
The actual blueprint Defoe created for this entire genre is rooted in absolute psychological desperation. It's this agonizing daily physical grind against nature. And I think to really understand the man's suffering on that island, we first have to examine the exact life he was running away from.
Let's do that. Let's look at his starting point, because his whole journey begins with this massive rejection of his family's expectations.
Yeah.
So his father desperately wants him to accept what he calls the middle station of life.
Right, the middle station.
Yeah. He gives Crusoe this incredibly earnest speech. He argues that the elite are just miserable because of their ambition and envy, and the poor are miserable because of hard labor and suffering. So the middle station, he argues, is the ultimate safe sweet spot.
And Defoe really frames this middle station as the standard of human felicity. It offers peace, plenty, moderation. You have to remember, he was writing during a time when this middle class was really beginning to solidify its power. It was viewed as the ideal existence. But to a young, restless guy like Crusoe, peace and moderation, that sounds like a death sentence.
It's basically the 18th century equivalent of the modern pressure to just, get a safe corporate job.
Yeah, exactly.
Max out your 401k,
Yeah.
buy a sensible sedan, and quietly ride out your days in suburbia. And Crusoe absolutely ignores this advice. He just runs away to sea.
He really does.
Now, many of you listening probably know the basic timeline of what happens next. He survives horrific storms on his first voyage. He gets captured by Turkish pirates. He's enslaved in a place called Sale for 2 years.
Which is terrifying in itself.
Totally terrifying.
Yeah.
Then he plots an escape with a young boy named Shuri, and eventually he builds a highly profitable sugar and tobacco plantation in Brazil. But what's crucial here isn't just the timeline, it's the psychology of it all. He actually achieves the exact middle station wealth his father promised him. He has the safe, comfortable life.
And it still isn't enough.
Exactly.
He simply cannot stay put. He's driven by this intense desire to multiply his wealth faster than normal agricultural business allows. So he boards a ship bound for Guinea to purchase enslaved people for the Brazilian plantations.
Yep.
And he sets sail on September 1st, 1659, which is exactly 8 years to the day after he first ran away.
Wow.
And that is when a massive hurricane hits. It destroys the ship, leaving him the sole survivor on what he eventually calls the Island of Despair.
Okay, so I have to ask you about this. Crusoe had multiple near-death warnings prior to this shipwreck.
Yeah.
Is Defoe just writing a classic adrenaline junkie who ignores red flags, or is this supposed to be a broader commentary on human ambition?
It is heavily framed as a commentary on the destructive nature of insatiable greed. Defoe was writing for an audience that was really immersed in the concept of providence. So Crusoe's refusal to stay in his lane, his constant hunger for more, it represents a kind of original sin. Crusoe actually views his own rambling thoughts as the source of his downfall.
Like he brought it on himself.
Exactly. The universe provided him with numerous off-ramps, the initial storm, the slavery, the successful plantation, yet his ambition just blinded him to every single warning.
And that blindness literally wrecks him.
Yeah.
But the irony is, the moment he washes up on that beach, the wealth he was chasing becomes entirely worthless. We see a total rewriting of the rules of economics here.
Oh, instantly.
Yeah. So the morning after the shipwreck, the storm has tossed the ruined ship closer to the shore. He swims out to the wreckage and he frantically builds this homemade raft to scavenge supplies.
And notice his priorities during the scavenging.
Yeah.
He leads bread, rice, cheese, rum. But the item he values above all else is the carpenter's chest, along with guns, powder, and swords.
Right. He explicitly states the carpenter's chest is more valuable than a shipload of gold. And he proves that theory a few trips later when he finds a locker containing 36 pounds in gold and silver coins.
The famous coin scene.
Yes. He stares at it and has this dramatic realization. He says, quote, "O drug, what art thou good for? Thou art not worth to me, no, not the taking off the ground. One of those knives is worth all this heap."
It's such a powerful moment. Total isolation just shatters our societal agreements instantly. Money possesses value solely because a society collectively agrees upon its worth as a medium of exchange, right?
Right.
But on the island of despair, that agreement does not exist. Utility becomes the only currency. A single iron hatchet holds intrinsic life-saving value because of its physical properties.
Right.
A gold coin is just a heavy piece of metal. Defoe strips away the artificial layers of commerce to expose the raw mechanics of survival.
And those mechanics require grueling physical labor. Like, the DIY reality of this book is staggering. Let's just consider his attempt to make a single board for a shelf in his cave.
Oh, this part is painful to read.
It takes him 42 days to produce one board.
The physical reality of 18th century woodworking for a single, unequipped man is nearly impossible for modern readers to grasp. He has to chop down a massive tree, hack away both sides until it somewhat resembles a plank, and then smooth it down with an adze.
Yeah, and let's clarify what an adze actually is, because it's not just an axe.
Right, it's very different.
An axe blade runs parallel to the handle, and it's designed for splitting wood apart. But an adze has a blade mounted horizontally. It's perpendicular to the handle, almost like a heavy steel hoe.
Yeah.
You stand over the timber and you swing it downward to shave off thin strips of wood. It is incredibly exhausting, precise work. I mean, one slip of the blade and you ruin the board, or worse, you take off your own foot.
And doing this day after day requires terrifying caloric expenditure. He notes in the text that 2 men with a saw pit could have cut 6 boards in half a day.
And a saw pit being that system where you dig a deep trench, lay the log over it, and one man stands down in the pit while the other stands on top, pushing and pulling a massive 2-man saw vertically.
Exactly. But the saw pit relies on cooperation and specialized tools.
Yeah.
Crusoe is entirely alone. He's substituting weeks of brute force for that missing infrastructure.
Yeah.
And we see the exact same struggle with his attempts to make clay pots. He spends 2 months just trying to figure out how to temper the clay.
Right, tempering being essentially adding materials like sand or crushed shells to raw clay.
Yeah.
Because if you don't alter the chemistry of the clay, it just shrinks and shatters when it dries.
And he has no idea how to do this.
Not at all.
He relies on relentless trial and error. He eventually produces these 2 ugly, misshapen earthen jars that simply dissolve when he puts them over a fire to boil meat.
Oh, man.
He only discovers how to bake them hard by sheer accident. A broken piece of clay falls into his cooking fire, turns red hot, and alters its chemical structure into rudimentary ceramics.
See, knowing all of this makes me strongly disagree with one of our sources.
Oh, the Capes and Tights review.
Yes. Justin Soderbergh, writing for Capes and Tights, found the story underwhelming. He claims that Crusoe accepts his situation far too quickly, setting up life on a deserted island without much introspection.
That's a strong claim.
I have to push back hard on this.
Yeah.
Can we really call him unintrospective? We just discussed him spending 42 days hacking at one piece of wood. And in the text, he explicitly describes running around the beach weeping, beating his face, wringing his hands, and crying out that he was undone.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but Soderbergh isn't entirely wrong in his observation, even if his conclusion is debatable.
Okay, how so?
Crusoe's emotional pivots are unnervingly fast. He transitions from weeping on the beach to engineering a fortress almost mechanically. Soderbergh's critique points to the friction between modern psychological expectations and 18th century literature. Today, a reader expends deep internal monologues dissecting trauma. Defoe just approaches it differently.
I don't think it's just a difference in literary style, though. To me, the labor is the coping mechanism.
That's a great point.
Right. If you are terrified of starving or being eaten by wild beasts, sitting down to process your trauma just isn't an option. You spend weeks building a fortress wall out of heavy wooden stakes and anchor cables because taking physical action is the only way to prevent a total mental breakdown.
He absolutely compartmentalizes his grief to an extreme degree, and it works brilliantly as a defense mechanism, keeping him alive and moving. But you cannot outrun the psychological toll forever. Eventually, his body simply gives out.
Right, the physical exhaustion inevitably catches up with him. After almost 10 months of back-breaking labor, the rainy season hits. And Crusoe falls deathly ill with a severe fever, what he calls an ague.
Mm-hmm.
He is shivering, freezing, just terribly weak, and in his delirium, the psychological dam finally breaks, resulting in a terrifying fever dream.
The apocalyptic imagery he experiences here is vivid. He dreams he is sitting outside his wall, and a man descends from a great black cloud in bright flames. The ground trembles when this figure steps on it. The man approaches Crusoe with a spear and declares, "Seeing all these things have not brought thee to repentance, now thou shalt die."
So, facing total isolation, his own mortality, and having zero medical help, he resorts to a truly desperate, improvised cure. He remembers that Brazilians use tobacco for almost all distempers, meaning physical ailments and diseases.
Yeah, and his application of it is wild.
It's crazy. So he finds a roll of green, uncured tobacco. He chews it, which nearly causes him to pass out from the toxicity. Then he steeps some in rum and drinks it. Finally, he burns it on hot coals and inhales the smoke until he nearly suffocates.
The sheer toxicity of chewing raw tobacco, drinking tobacco-infused alcohol, and inhaling the smoke could easily induce severe nicotine poisoning.
Right.
It's astounding the quote-unquote cure didn't kill him before the fever did. But he falls into this profound day-long sleep. And when he wakes up, the fever has miraculously broken.
And this near-death experience triggers a massive mental shift. He opens one of the Bibles he salvaged from the wreck and begins reading verses like, "Call on me in the day of trouble, and I will deliver thee." And suddenly, his entire perspective flips.
It's a complete 180.
He stops seeing the island as a prison. He actually concludes that he is happier on this desolate island than he was in his past life. He declares himself the lord of the whole manor, noting he has no rivals and no competitors.
And we really have to evaluate the nature of this shift. Are we witnessing a genuine spiritual enlightenment, or is his brain simply reframing the trauma into a quote-unquote blessing as the ultimate psychological defense mechanism to avoid madness?
Well, I mean, if you wake up every day believing you are cursed and destined to die alone, madness is guaranteed.
Yes.
But if you construct a narrative that says, God placed me here to save me from my wicked ways, and I am the king of this domain, you instantly regain agency. The suffering becomes bearable because it now has a purpose.
Exactly. Constructing that narrative is a masterful survival strategy, regardless of whether it stems from divine revelation or just a desperate subconscious need for control.
Right.
Finding meaning in suffering neutralizes the despair. However, claiming the title of king doesn't suddenly grant him infinite wisdom. His newfound enlightenment does not cure his catastrophic flaws in planning.
Oh, yeah. Those flaws manifest in spectacular physical failures. The Great Canoe Folly is the perfect example of this.
It hurts to read.
It really does. So after 4 years on the island, he becomes obsessed with reaching the mainland he spotted in the distance. He decides to carve a periagua, which is a massive canoe, out of a single tree, mimicking the techniques he observed indigenous people using in Brazil.
And he locates a cedar tree nearly 6 feet in diameter at the base.
Huge.
The sheer scale of this project is staggering for one man. It takes him 20 days merely to hack the tree down, another 14 days to chop off the branches, and months to hollow the trunk out into a vessel capable of holding 26 men.
And he takes immense pride in this creation.
Huh.
He calls it the most handsome canoe ever made. There was just one devastating oversight.
It's a minor detail.
Right. He built this massive, incredibly heavy boat 100 yards away from the water.
He cannot move it an inch.
Not an inch. He tries using levers and rollers. He tries digging the ground away. But it's physically impossible for one man to budge it. So his backup plan is to dig a canal to bring the water to the boat. He measures it out, calculates the necessary depth and width, and realizes that digging that canal by himself will take 10 to 12 years.
It is a devastating realization of wasted labor. He acted entirely on impulse, blinded by his own eagerness, and completely failed to account for the logistics of his environment.
It's like building a state-of-the-art high-speed train in a warehouse without laying any tracks first.
That's a great comparison.
He was so completely obsessed with the engineering of the vehicle itself that he ignored the fundamental infrastructure required to make it move. All that labor, completely useless because he never tested the final step.
And to his credit, he admits his foolishness in the text, acknowledging his inability to see the broader implications of his actions. But this concept of blindness, failing to see the reality of the structures around him, connects directly to the other major critique from Capes and Tights.
Let's talk about that. Because Justin Soderbergh highlights the challenge of reading a story from the 1700s through a modern lens, particularly regarding Crusoe's unexamined prejudices.
Right.
Now, in the first 10 chapters we are covering today, Crusoe is entirely alone. But Soderbergh points out that later in the book, when Crusoe finally finds a companion, a man he names Friday, Crusoe immediately defaults to treating Friday as a servant rather than a fellow human being or an equal.
This creates a significant tension for the modern reader. The source material is undeniably a product of 1719. We have to recall the specific circumstances that led Crusoe to the island in the first place, right? He was on a voyage to purchase enslaved people from Guinea for his Brazilian plantation.
He was an active participant in the transatlantic slave trade.
Yeah.
Even earlier in the story, when he escapes slavery in sail with the boy Shuri, who, by the way, actively helps him survive and navigate the African coast, Crusoe eventually allows a Portuguese captain to buy Shuri.
Yes.
He effectively sells the boy who helped him escape, accepting a promise that Shuri will be freed in 10 years if he converts to Christianity.
And the modern critique rightfully points out that Crusoe operates with an intense, era-specific colonial mindset. He assumes hierarchy, dominion, and ownership everywhere he goes. I mean, he literally titles himself the king or emperor of the island before he even knows if another soul inhabits it.
Yeah.
His worldview is structured entirely around commerce and subjugation.
So as modern readers, how do we engage with a text that offers these incredible universal moments of human ingenuity, yet is fundamentally rooted in such historically brutal mindsets?
Well, it requires the capacity to hold two opposing ideas simultaneously. We can analyze and marvel at the universal themes of human resilience, like spending 42 days making a single board, battling psychological madness, understanding that utility supersedes manufactured wealth. Those elements tap into the raw core of the human condition.
So we don't have to endorse his worldview to appreciate the mechanics of his survival.
Exactly. We must recognize that the protagonist is a deeply flawed product of his era. His prejudices are largely unexamined within the text itself. But by acknowledging both his resilience and his ingrained biases, we gain a much richer, more complex understanding of both the narrative and the history it reflects. The book serves as both a timeless testament to human survival and a stark artifact of historical imperialism.
And honestly, the survival mechanics force us to look inward, regardless of the historical baggage. We've covered a massive journey today.
We really have.
We've examined how taking the safety of the middle station for granted can lead to a spectacular fall. We watch the perceived value of gold and silver evaporate. The second the societal agreements enforcing them were stripped away, and we explore the extreme physical fortresses and elaborate psychological narratives human beings construct, simply to keep despair at bay.
We observe the triumph of a man discovering how to alter the chemistry of clay in a fire, right alongside the crushing defeat of an engineer who built a magnificent boat he could never launch.
Which leaves us with a final, lingering thought for you to ponder on your own. Think back to that defining moment on the shipwreck when Crusoe stares at a pile of gold coins and just laughs at their absolute uselessness.
Oh, drug.
Exactly. If you were suddenly dropped onto the island of despair tomorrow, which of your most prized, extensive modern possessions would instantly become your useless gold?
That's a tough question.
Would it be your smartphone, completely dead without a network connection? A high-end designer watch that merely ticks away the agonizing hours of your isolation? It forces a harsh question. What is the actual utility of the things you value most right now? Are you surrounding yourself with the equivalent of carpenter's chests, or are you just admiring shiny coins while the ship goes down? Until next time.